Hey guys, this video will cover the detailing of your one-point perspective summative cityscape project. There are a couple of different techniques that you will notice me use in the video, and you will kind of just want to go throughout the different parts to figure out which ones you want to pull from and what you are going to be working with. The very first technique that you'll notice here is that I am working with a brick texture. When you are working with bricks, especially if you're going around corners, you're going to want to make sure that all of your lines are going to match up, and if your brick is facing towards your road, you are going to need to have every line facing or going towards that vanishing point. So you'll notice that the points radiate from that very starting area, and all the bricks that you do will all kind of point in that direction. The other thing with bricks is that they are offset, so the end of one will be in the middle of the one on top or below it. The easiest way for you to do this is to just use your ruler and draw a line straight down while skipping over every other line, and you'll notice me do this as I work across here. The other thing to think about is that due to the bricks that are facing towards the street going backwards in space, you're going to want to make your lines very slightly closer to each other the further you go backwards into space. So they'll be wider the closer they are to you, and closer to each other the further away they are from you. Our next step is going to be trying to decide how we're doing lettering using this method. The easiest way is going to be to make a little section where the lettering will go, and this is going to need to adhere to the vanishing point. So you'll draw your two lines going from your vanishing point to whatever your building is. Secondly, you'll want to split that shape that you made into however many spaces you'll need to do the writing for your building or your workplace. And then finally, separating those lines and making them slightly bigger the closer they are to you, and slightly smaller the closer they get to the vanishing point. So you'll notice here that the I looks slightly larger than the O, and it gives it that optical illusion of it occupying that space. You also want to make sure that you're not just writing it straight across like you would write on a piece of paper, because that is not going to adhere to the vanishing point guidelines that we are working with. Next, you'll see that I am actually going to be adding a glass window to my storefront. This is pretty simple to do. You will make what looks like a 3D shape within your building. I achieved this just by making my lines go from the vanishing points, and then my other lines will be both horizontal and perpendicular to kind of make it look like it's going backwards in space. And from there, you can just add whatever you want in there to make it look like it is a display window and has some things that you would want to go in and buy. And then, of course, I'm going to add some smaller details just as I go along. One thing that you can do to make your piece look a little bit more unique to you would be to go back over the lines that you drew with your ruler, just using your regular pencil marks. This is going to make things look a little bit more authentic, as generally it's hard to reach perfection when you're using building materials. So here you'll see that I am redrawing the bricks, but they are a little bit lumpy, perhaps slightly uneven, and that's just going to make them look like they've been there for a while and like they're actually occupying the space a little bit better. Next, we are going to look at how to do windows. These are going to be actually kind of similar to the lettering in that you are going to want to draw your lines from your vanishing point to the building itself, and that will give you the spacing for those windows. If you are wanting to do something where the windows are rounded at the top, you'll also add a middle line to give yourself a reference point for where the curve should end and the windows can kind of go back to being straight. This is something that we already saw when we were talking about how to do doors, so it shouldn't be all that unfamiliar to do correctly. At this point, I am working on the sidewalk. Your sidewalk line should be parallel to the bottom of your piece of paper, so you can just line up your ruler or straight edge with the bottom of your paper in order to make sure that that line is straight. And then as you move backwards into space, your lines should get a little bit closer together to make it look like it's going back towards that vanishing point. You can also choose to add a little bit of a ledge by drawing a second line and then doing perpendicular lines to make it have a little bit of depth, going from the sidewalk to the street. So at this point, I am basically just working around my page and adding different decorative elements that will make my cityscape look a little bit more finished and less like a sketch. The more details that you add, the more realistic your overall piece will look, and making sure to include things like doors, roofs, other elements, even sidewalks going from the buildings themselves to the street and the sidewalk will kind of help you along. And of course you can always choose to add other stuff as you are finishing up your piece and doing your outlining. So really what you see here is maybe still just kind of a median point, and I will continue to add things and fill out details as I go along. So remember, at this point I decided that I wanted to use a reference from the internet. I will post that in the top right corner of this video. I did decide to do some gates like a zoo. However, I sort of simplified it down and went with what I thought would look pretty good without being too much or overly detailed to match the rest of my piece. So it's a pretty rough inspiration. However, I still do want to say that that is where I pulled some inspiration from. This last step is going to be outlining all of your lines that you have sketched out and drawn with a pencil. Remember that a good way to make this look a little bit more organic and like it was drawn by a person and not by a computer would be to maybe put the ruler to the side and just try to draw straight with your hand. There will be some natural variance because it's really hard to just draw perfectly straight lines. However, it makes it look a little bit more like a drawing that was made by a person. So it's something to consider, and I would highly recommend it. In addition to that, these pictures will be decorated however you would like. You can choose to do colored pencil, you can do watercolor, you can do pen shading techniques that we worked with recently, or you can just do pencil shading. But I would recommend at least outlining with your Sharpie or with a pen to give it some more oomph as you are working and finishing this up. So you'll see that I outline everything, and then I haven't quite decided what I want to do with it to finish it up, but I will post the final drawing just as soon as I finish that. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. If you have questions, if you need help, please feel free to reach out to me on Schoology, and we will be working on the coloring and finalizing of these pieces before we turn them in on Wednesday. Happy drawing!